record on this computer. Okay.
And I'm going to play part of chapter 4 of My Way of Life because it's all about her entertaining and having people over for dinner. And
oh my gosh, this is going to be the most epic thing I've done in my whole life.
oh, geez.
I'm kidding,
No
but I'm
pressure.
not.
No
I love
pressure.
Joan so much, and I'm just so excited.
Well, I can't wait till we can do this in person with everybody. And
oh my gosh, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Go live to the public. Okay. And Jack, you'll let me know when we pop up on Facebook here. And then
yeah, it says we're streaming live.
Yep.
Okay, Casey, I changed you to be the host. So
Excellent.
If you want to try the whole share screen thing and see if we can
Okay, let's start with the we'll start with the home movie clip just for a second.
Oh, how cool.
Okay, can you see, you guys see that okay?
yeah.
It's and it's working on Facebook too. So yeah.
Excellent. Okay, good. All right, let me pause it there and just go back. Okay. Okay. Now let me just quickly try. We have a couple more minutes. Let me just let me try the audio book. And I'm just playing it off of Audible, so. There we go.
Setting the stage. Love needs the most beautiful setting it can get. A few great pieces of theater have been mounted on bare stages like Our Town, Don Juan in Hell, and the one-man performances of John Gielgud. That's just to name a few that come to mind. But lacking a proscenium arch, a good marriage deserves a lovely background. And a lovely background requires taste and all the professional help you can get. My own decorating experiments have run the gamut of style. I can hardly remember all the things I've tried. In one of my first houses, a rented one, I had portraits of dancing girls done in black velvet with blonde hair, real hair too. I guess they were
Okay, I'm actually going to move to chapter, they're having it chapter 5. That's where she talks about the dinner party and stuff. And so I'll play that one then.
Okay, cool.
All right, just give me just a second. Let me try this.
Chapter 4. A lovely home means two things to me.
There we go. Beautiful. Okay, we're ready to go.
All right.
You know, that book really was the first of its kind. I mean, this was before
Yeah.
Pierce and Jane Fonda, and you know, the first lifestyle of the rich and famous book.
Yeah, I mean, she went into just incredible detail about what she, you know, her daily routines and you know, what she was serving for dinner. I mean, it was just, you know, and my wife and I always laugh about the section where she talks about her and Al. She had a little tiny mini refrigerator next to their bed, and
how funny.
You know, it would be like sausage and cheese at like 9 o'clock at night, and I'm like, oh my God, come on. But you know, why not? I guess.
The 50s. So I'm going to go ahead and formally do our introduction. So welcome everybody to what is going to be a truly epic and very special episode of Hollywood Kitchen. Today we are celebrating the life, legacy, cooking, recipes, and everything Joan Crawford. And our very special guest today is Joan Crawford's grandson, Casey LaLonde. And co-hosting with me today is my friend Jack Fields, who is a freelance writer for Turner Classic Movies, a theater director, and also a festival programmer for Plaza Festival in Texas. So thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation.
This is so fun.
Yes, we are so excited. I do want to quickly point out, I'm wearing a Joan Crawford apron. I love Joan, and a few months ago, I did a special Michael Curtiz, Hungarians and Hollywood episode with Alan Brody, who is the biographer of Michael Curtiz, who of course directed Joan and Mildred Pierce. And as a gift, a day or two after, Alan mailed me a Joan Crawford apron. And it's funny because I was sort of afraid to ask Casey. I had gotten your email address and I'd reached out to a few other people I wanted to get and never heard back. So I was so scared to email you thinking, oh, I won't hear back. And then the day after I got this apron on, I put it on one morning and I was like, today's the day I asked Casey. I think the apron emboldened me, actually. And like 2 minutes later, you said yes.
Of course.
So I'm so excited to have you
I
here.
am as well. I am as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And in a bit, we're going to start talk for a while before we make a recipe. We're going to make two today, Joan Crawford's meatloaf and Joan Crawford's peanut butter and bacon toast. So yes, but we'll start off talking all about you, about Joan, about your family. And Jack, do you want to lead off with some questions for him?
Sure. So the world knew Joan Crawford as this larger-than-life movie star, born Lucille LeSueur, of course, went from total poverty to vaudeville to bit parts in movies to superstardom. And everyone worshipped her as Joan Crawford. But Casey, you knew her as?
I knew her as JoJo. She was not one to be called grandma, grandmother, anything. My mom Kathy and she came up with that nickname for us grandkids to use with her because she was still Joan Crawford, the iconic internationally known movie star, businesswoman, and loving grandparent.
Aw. What do you remember when you first met her?
Yes, I was born in 1972, so about 5.5 years before she passed away. But I knew she would call frequently. We lived about 2 hours west of her apartment in New York. We lived in Eastern Pennsylvania, so it was not a hard thing to get in the car and drive and see JoJo on the weekends. We'd see her at least once a month, maybe every 5 weeks. But we'd always have frequent phone calls with her. And it was always a treat. You know, we got to go to grandma's house. But as a young child, I didn't really fully understand that she was Joan Crawford, the famous movie star.
When did you finally know that? When did you finally see her movies and kind of put the pieces together of who she was?
Yeah, for anybody living in the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania metro area, we had 2 TV stations, WPIX and WWOR, Channel 9, Channel 11. They would show, the late show. I would catch, Mildred Pierce or A Woman's Face or Rain, since it was in public domain. They'd show those movies once in a while. Maybe when I was probably after she passed away in 1977, I started to understand that she worked in Hollywood for 6 decades, had 80 plus movies to her credit, numerous TV shows. It was probably really after her death that I started to fully understand just how famous she was and the breadth and depth of her career.
What?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sure.
What are your favorite Joan Crawford movies?
My personal favorites, I have a couple of guilty pleasures, and of course, just the standards that you can't pass by as a classic movie fan in general, and forget being a Joan fan. My favorites, of course, are the 3 big Warner Brothers movies. Mildred Pierce, of course, she won her Oscar, Possessed, and Humoresque. We just watched Humoresque. It was just on TCM, I think, a couple weeks ago. I love that movie. John Garfield's, just incredible. Mildred Pierce, of course, is her Oscar-winning performance. And anytime it's on TCM, or this new, there's a new movies network that just started a couple of years ago. They run all kinds of 30s, 40s, and 50s films on there. I will stop and watch because you can't turn the channel and leave Mildred behind. So those are my favorites. I do also like a few older movies from the 30s. I like the first Possessed a lot, but a couple of my guilty pleasures include Trog, of course. That was her last film, because why not? It's Joan with a crazy Neanderthal dressed up guy playing a monster. I'll watch Straight Jacket. That's good, campy fun. Baby Jane, of course. You can't not love Baby Jane. And Johnny Guitar is another one of my favorites. I think Johnny Guitar, the Nicholas Ray movie, is just it's gotten a lot more recognition in the past few years because of its feminist perspective. That is just incredible, and the new restoration of the film is just it's eye-poppingly vibrant, the way that it was reconstructed and cleaned up. So those are my favorites.
I agree. I have so many favorites too, and I love Possessed. I love she and Clark Gable. They had such incredible chemistry together, and you can just feel it radiate off the screen. And to me, it's so pleasurable to watch them.
Yeah, they of course they had their 30-year relationship, friendship, whatever you want to call it. I think that comes through on the screen. And that early the first Possessed is just, it's Joan, just beautiful. Clark Gable at his pinnacle of his power in Hollywood, and he just exudes manhood and the Clark Gable persona. So I love that film especially. Yeah.
And you have said that even though you only knew her for a short time, that again, this larger than life, ultra glamorous movie star, she actually had a pretty domestic side, and she passed that on to your mom. And
yeah, she when we would go visit, now when I knew her, she was starting to be in declining health, and she died in 77. But she, as we all know, she maintained a household. She maintained multiple households over her years. She loved to entertain. She loved having people over for dinner. She treated my sister and I to just a wonderful environment and experience when we would visit her in New York at her apartment. And I think with her lifestyle book, My Way of Life, that just showed how much preparation went into being Joan Crawford, and also the extent to which she would entertain her friends. And it was all about creating a welcoming, comforting environment for anyone who visited her home, no matter who it was.
Nowadays, there's so many actresses that sort of turn to be lifestyle entrepreneurs, if you will, or lifestyle gurus. Joan was one of the first to do this.
Yeah, she with the publication of My Way of Life, I don't know of another book of that of its era that a celebrity especially really kind of distilled their daily routines and how they took care of themselves and how they entertained. And it's of course a campy book too, because we look at it in its time, and now it's 2021, things are a little bit different obviously, but in its time, it was a marvel to see how a celebrity really opened up and showed the public how she led her life and how she did business. That and sections of the book are fascinating as well.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that impresses me so much about Joan Crawford is she could be this incredible artist, making these wonderful movies and working with these incredible people. She was such an amazing businesswoman from the beginning. And if you want to talk about her work as a businesswoman, forging her artistic career as an actress, of course, but with Pepsi and with writing books and with being involved with charities, amazing entrepreneur.
Yeah, she from an early age, as soon as she hit Hollywood, she understood that number one, the fans who went to see her movies paid her bills. Without the fan base, she would just be another dancer in a dance hall somewhere. She took care of the crew that she worked with on any film. She was always supportive of the crew members because they made her look good for the camera. And then moving into the 50s and 60s, she was negotiating, back end points on movies for herself when, outside of just a few cases in the past, that was something remarkable that an actress could have that much power and sway with the studios to do that. And her charity work kind of goes unspoken. She was a big donor to the Hollywood home in Woodland Hills for decades, to the point where it was just revealed a few years ago that she would anonymously kind of buy a bed where these crew members and actresses would end up either in the hospital or the home, and she would buy the bed and pay for the care of whoever landed in that bed. So it was all anonymously done by her, and to this day, per her will, all those back end points deals for her movies from the 50s and 60s, the money still goes to her charities to this day. So she had enough forethought to do that in her will, to continue to support the charities that she loved throughout her life.
That really says a lot about her too, that she did so much of that privately.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't necessarily done for show or for publicity, but it was just done because she cared.
Yeah, Joan was never shy for any kind of publicity, but I think she did not want to publicize that charity work specifically, because it came from her heart, and she didn't want to be, maybe seen as doing that just for publicity as opposed to being extremely charitable. So that shows a lot about her character to me, for sure.
Very cool. Now, you said some of your favorite movies. Do you know, in your research or your family background, did Jones have some favorites of her work, or some favorite memories, or anything that strikes you about her career?
Yeah, I know she did love her time at Warner Brothers. Again, how can you not separate, Mildred Pierce from her career and her love of that movie? She worked with Ann Blythe on that film. Possessed, again, and Humoresque during that time period as well. She loved A Woman's Face, as do I. That's one I did not mention. And I asked for the inaugural TCM Film Festival to run that film as the Joan film that they chose that year. And I helped introduce that. So I think A Woman's Face was another one of her favorites. She does have a couple of, especially one, she never liked rain. I really don't, I really would like to obviously know more as to her reasoning behind it, but that's one of the films that was kind of a stinker for her. I can imagine the the Trogs and maybe Berserk she was not quite happy with, for various reasons, but it still paid the bills, and she was still the Joan Crawford that we all know and love.
Always. And I like to think that even movies that weren't, prestige films, that, again, she was so aware of her public and aware of audiences and wanting to reach audiences, that even if it was a more campy movie, like, I love Torch Song.
Torch Song, absolutely, of course.
And I love The Best of Everything. And even if it was movies like that, she understood, there is a public out there. And even if I am playing this diva or this not totally likable character, publicity is publicity. Do you think?
Yeah, even the Harriet Craigs and Queen Bees, they were not flattering for her whatsoever, but they were still good scripts, and she wanted to put some product out there for her fans. And Torch Song that's another guilty pleasure. You know, that's another film that I just can't go past on the TiVo. That's for sure when it's on TCM, because it's campy to me and funny, and it's just another one of those films.
I heard a quote one time from Joan that someone had said that she said, "I'd play Wally Berry's grandmother if it was a good script."
Absolutely.
And I believe that, you know.
Yeah, I think anytime she can deliver, you know, any kind of performance, and it's always a Joan performance, no matter what, from 1925 forward. I think delivering that product again to her fan base is what she wanted to do, and stay in the industry, no matter what. And she did that over six decades in Hollywood, which is unheard of.
And she managed to evolve, which is so remarkable, from being the fun flapper to the hard-boiled working girl to the woman's pictures of the 1940s, where she's these incredibly like inspirational, strong characters, to the melodramas of the 50s, the horror films of the 60s. And she really shape-shifted both her appearance, her roles. I mean, she changed with the times in a way that a lot of people couldn't.
Yeah, she even into the late 50s and early 60s, you know, she was married 4 times. She loses Al Steele in 59, and then she goes to work on The Best of Everything without missing a beat. And again, it wasn't necessarily a glamorous role in The Best of Everything, but it still got her on screen, and she got to work with some wonderful young actors and actresses. And it's still a beloved movie to me to this day. Starting back in the mid-20s, can you imagine pre-Depression era Hollywood, and then surviving all the way through past World War II into the 50s, 60s, and then 1970 is her last film. It's just remarkable. Just remarkable.
What I have always said of Joan Crawford, and continue to say all the time, is that I think her move from MGM in 43 to Mildred Pierce in 45 is the greatest comeback in movie history. Katharine Hepburn had to come back with Philadelphia Story, Judy Garland in A Star Is Born, but Joan left for 2 years, and you said even turned down other material because she knew it had to be the right material for her to go back to work, and she did with Mildred Pierce, and she won the Academy Award, went from box office poison to pretty much her zenith with that mid-40s era at Warner Brothers.
Yeah, she was starring in Reunion in France and Ice Follies of 1939, and
which I still watch at Christmas every year. I just have to say that.
I will still watch that anytime it's on, without question.
We will die on that hillside.
Absolutely. But yeah, she made the switch to Warner Brothers, and again, in the modern era, actors and actresses come and go anymore. We don't see them for years, and they just drop off. She came back after that kind of 2-year hiatus of declining Warner Brothers scripts, and then coming back into the game with Mildred Pierce, which won her an Oscar. And it wasn't, it certainly wasn't a giveaway by the Academy. She faced tough competition that year, and for her to win is just, she was the comeback kid for sure.
I think she knew it, as Jack said, that it had to be the right script. She couldn't just do anything, because if she chose poorly, then the comeback isn't going to happen. So she really had to carefully select what was going to come next, because everything depended on that.
Yeah, and her choice to do well, not her choice. The fact that she had to do a screen test to get the role. She was a successful multi-decade actress by that point, and for her to have to screen test really shows to me that she wanted the role, she wanted the script, and for her to screen test with the prospective actresses who were going to play her daughter Vida, it just shows a dedication to the industry and to herself, that she knew this was what she needed to come back big, and she did it.
Wow.
Yes. So should we start making the food, and then we'll revisit and get back to all
Absolutely.
of
Yeah,
other
and I'm
topics,
keeping an eye
but-
on the feed. If you want to submit your questions on the Facebook Live, I'm happy to share them. I have an eye on it here.
Should we start off by making the appetizer and then we will make the meatloaf? I was telling you guys earlier, but Joan says this recipe appears. There's a lady named silverscreensuppers.com is her website, Jenny Hamilton in England. She's a film archivist who cooks celebrity recipes. And a few years back, she published an entire cookbook called Cooking with Joan Crawford, which has been so awesome. And this recipe is in that book and also in My Way of Life. The peanut butter and bacon toasts. I printed it up here. It's funny when I told some of my friends what we were going to cook this weekend, they all said, I don't know about the meatloaf, but that peanut butter toast thing sounds really awesome with the bacon on it. So, I did not have any round cookie cutters like Joan says to use, but mine are shaped like little stars. I had Christmas star cookie cutters.
Very nice, very appropriate for a Hollywood cooking show.
I thought so. So cut little circles from very thin white bread with the cookie cutter, toast them and butter them, which I've done here. Okay, spread over some peanut butter. Spread over some peanut butter. Cook them in the broiler, which I kind of actually, these toast is already pretty crunchy here. Okay, and then sprinkle crumbled bacon on the top. All right, so here's what my final product looks like.
Very nice.
This is an easy to make recipe that I think would be a huge crowd pleaser when we can have parties and get-togethers again.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then the meatloaf. Now, I did consult a few people on the meatloaf, including shout out to Samantha Ellis she's also a movie blogger who cooks a lot of these recipes. She kind of forewarned me about a few little pitfalls here. So Joan's recipe does call for putting a full hard-boiled egg in the center of the meatloaf. I was cautioned against that because it would outrageously overcook the egg, but then the meat around the egg would be way undercooked. So what I'm kind of doing is adding the egg in later on, like at the very end. But I got this recipe. It was also featured in Cooking with Joan Crawford. I also have it from this cookbook, Cookbook of the Stars.
Nice.
So, all right, we are going to, these are the ingredients that we will need here. Oh, hang on just a sec. We've got our ground sirloin and pork, and I'm skipping the veal. For some reason, classic celebrity recipes have no veal for me.
No veal for me either. No.
So we've got the meats here. I couldn't find a Bermuda onion, so I just found a brownish colored onion. I hope hope Joan will be okay with that.
I think she will.
Our Lowry's seasoned salt, our A1 steak sauce and Worcestershire sauce, our raw eggs, our bell pepper, hard-boiled egg is going to wait till later, and we have our cup of water. I do want to say that I'm going to skip, again, I'm going to skip the veal, but I'm also going to add the hard-boiled egg in later. And so we will combine the ingredients in the bowl here. Oh, what I do want to say is I'm making a smaller version of this because Joan's version feeds 10 people.
That's a lot of meatloaf.
A lot of meatloaf.
That's a lot of
It's
meatloaf.
just me. And for some reason, things do not fare well in the freezer in my home. So I'm going to make a scaled down version I hope Joan's okay with that.
I'm sure she would be.
Okay, so I'm going to mix the eggs with the meat with the bell pepper and onion. I'm going to stir this nice and thoroughly here. Now, Casey, did your mother ever make these recipes for you growing up?
Well, that's an interesting thing. My mom was a homemaker for pretty much all of my life. We never ate meatloaf, so I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure if she just wasn't a meatloaf fan or because this is, I mean, I think I'd like to hear both of your opinions as well. I think this is Joan's most famous recipe is the meatloaf with the crazy, hard-boiled egg in the middle. But we never ate meatloaf in my house. So I'm not sure if she ate way too much of this as a kid or what. but the peanut butter and bacon on toast, I had it one time growing up. My mom made it for me one time, and I was like, hey, I was older too. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I asked her where did this recipe come from? It sounded like something Elvis's chef would cook for him or something, something crazy. So, bananas and peanut butter sandwiches, Monte Cristo sandwiches, whatever. And she said, no, this was one of your grandmother's favorite recipes. And that was the first time I, as a young kid, ever even got an inkling that there was more to JoJo than movie star. And I finally started to realize that she had this whole entertaining and almost lifestyle thing going on separately. I've made it a few times since, but now that we're making it today, I will definitely make this this week for sure.
And if when you do, send me a picture, because I'd love to post it on social media, tag it. If anybody watching this makes any of these, I think one of the things that's fun to me about doing these little shows is kind of being able to share food and share film history and fun, even though we're all kind of stuck at home.
Yeah.
So.
And I think we all need to share our beverage of choice.
Oh, there you go. Of course, Pepsi. And I've got an interesting Joan memento artifact. I'm going to hold it close to the screen. The brand is Park. It's a Park. It's essentially a Zippo lighter with the Pepsi bottle cap on it.
How cool.
And that's in my personal collection of Joan memorabilia that we got after her death.
We do want to plug that one of the reasons we strategically chose today to do this episode is because March 23rd is Joan's birthday.
It is.
And all day long, TCM will be running a whole series all day of Joan Crawford films.
Yeah, they usually do a good job, and sometimes her birthday gets kind of missed because of Oscars, because TCM does the month of Oscars, but they're doing that in April this year. So it was just a nice change up for TCM to be able to show her movies all day. So I'm definitely looking forward to that on Tuesday.
Let's have a birthday Pepsi toast to Joan.
Yay! Cheers!
Cheers. Now, Casey, there has been a little bit of dispute about the year of Joan's birth.
Yes.
What do you think it is? I've heard 05 and 06.
Yeah, I've seen 19 and 1900 anything is just crazy. But yeah, I've seen 1904, 1906, 1908. I believe she claimed 1908 simply because that was the first year Texas had birth certificates.
Oh.
So yeah, so that was the first year that she could be documented as being born in Texas. I go with 1906 just for the general timeline, but she's definitely she's always claimed 1908 as her birth date, so I'll give it to her, but I go with 1906 just in my research. And
I've got the mixture of the meatloaf here.
Oh, there you go. Very nice.
And then Joan says to top it off with the steak sauce, Worcestershire sauce, and the Lowry's that is supposedly forming a crust on top of
Oh, very nice.
So I'm going to do that, and then we'll almost be done with the cooking segment here. All right, so here's what it looks like going into the oven.
Very nice.
Nice.
Ray can see. And then here's what my test batch looked like when I added the egg at the very end. The steak sauce in this case sort of baked right into it, but here's what the final product looked like.
Oh, very nice. Okay.
Really yummy.
All right, so food portion is done here. And what year did My Way of Life actually come out? Was it early 70s, right?
I think it was 1970 when it was published. Oh, no, sorry, 1973. Let me just double check. 1971 officially, per my republished edition of My Way of Life. So 1971. So, a good few years before she passed away. But again, 1971. Again, I don't know much of else that was happening in the so celebrity, what is it called now? Self-care? Is that the general term? The celebrity, Gwyneth Paltrow, Goop, and Martha Stewart. I'm hoping they took some inspiration from her back from the 70s to make their careers as well. So
Excellent. So there's so many more topics we want to cover about Joan. Jack, what are some of the other things that you'd like to discuss? I think there's so many myths about Joan that I think need to be debunked. That's one thing I enjoy doing on these episodes is anytime we can shatter a myth, a rumor, a misconception about a star, I always like to do that, because there's just so many out there.
Well, elephant in the room question.
Yeah.
We asked it during the rehearsal. You're not in touch with Christina, are you?
No, and sadly, she is the last remaining child alive. My mom, Kathy, passed away about a year ago, January of 2020, right before COVID hit here. But Christina is the last adopted child left. I just turned, oh my God, 49. I've never met Christina in my entire life. It seemed like, well before I was born, things started to go downhill between Christina and Joan. And the last time that my mother, Kathy, even saw Christina in person was at the reading of the infamous will. So that was the last time in 1977 that my mom had any direct contact with Christina. And my mom even sued Christina back in, oh gosh, was it 1995, thereabouts? Christina went on Larry King Live and claimed that my mom, Kathy, and her biological twin, Cindy, my Aunt Cindy, were not related. They were just two kids put together and shipped off to California for Joan to adopt. But we had already met the birth family of the twins back in Tennessee. So that was debunked, and my mother won an award from Christina from the court case. But I've never met her. My only aunt, my only living aunt, I have never met her.
I would also, Casey, like to talk about the auction story. I heard you tell my friend Scott Michaels about the story. So can you tell us how you have continued Joan's legacy and how you really helped save it from getting into the wrong hands in an auction?
Absolutely. So it goes back to 1997. I was leaving for graduate school. My wife and I were leaving the Eastern PA area to move to Virginia so I could go to grad school. And I knew my mother inherited all the real property from Joan. There was a huge auction after her death in 77, 78, that a lot of stuff was auctioned off. But the really, what I now consider the really important stuff, her Oscar, her Golden Globe, and also among this stuff in our basement was a box of film reels. So, I've been a classic movie fan my entire life for obvious reasons, but I knew these films needed to get somewhere. So I called up, I was leaving for grad school like in 2 days. It was going to happen. I had to get out. I had to leave. So I called up George Eastman House in Rochester, New York. I told them what I had. They gave me their FedEx number, and I shipped the box of film reels to them. And it turned out to be what we now have as the part one of the home movie collection. And it's 1938 through early 40s, a lot of Kodachrome, full color. It's some of the earliest color natural video now of Joan Crawford. Red hair, freckles, the whole thing. Fast forward to 2011, I read somewhere or saw somewhere that my mother was auctioning a bunch of other stuff off. So I got the catalog, and described was, I think, 2 boxes of ephemera, which means just anything you throw in a box. It could be photos, but described are a bunch of photos and film reels. So I guess I missed a box in the basement when I was leaving for grad school, but I knew I had to have it. So my wife and I, we cashed out our retirement and went to New York to Doyle Auction House, and we previewed the day before we previewed the 2 boxes. I even bid on the Golden Globe, but it got way too expensive. But I wanted that box of stuff because there were more film reels, and I knew I had to get them and get them preserved so we could start showing them to the world. Because I had already shown part 1 to TCM Film Festival. We did the cruise, UCLA. I showed them at MoMA a couple of years ago. So I bought the part 2, what turned out to be part 2. So now we have another 30, 45 minutes of video. Well, I'm using new parlance here. It was film mostly shot in the 40s and 50s. And a lot of it is audio. There's audio, which is crazy. She's being interviewed. The part 1 collection is more home movies of her and whomever was shooting video on a 16 millimeter handheld camera. This was a lot of interviews and clips with sound. And it's so great to hear my grandmother talking, and I can hear her voice, and she's older, and there's some really crazy footage, including this is a lot of the time when she's working with Al Steele at Pepsi. There is color footage, extensive color footage of her and Al being received in Baghdad, Iraq, to open up the Baghdad, Iraq Pepsi plant, because Al was all about expanding Pepsi's footprint around the world. They traveled everywhere, and there's a welcoming procession, and then there's hundreds of Pepsi trucks lined up at the airport upon their arrival as the welcoming committee. And the footage is just incredible. But there was someone else in the audience at the Doyle Auction House bidding against me. And the estimate, was $500, maybe $800 for the 2 boxes of stuff. And it turns out I still hold the record for ephemera purchase at an auction house to this day, because I had to spend $8,000 or $10,000 to get these 2 boxes of stuff, because there was someone in the back of the room. No one else was bidding on it except me. And it turned out to be one of Christina's producers, who I think she still does them. She does these one-woman talks and plays at places around the country. His name was Jerry, and he was there to bid against me. He didn't know I was there. He had no idea who I was, but there were 2 of us, and I thankfully won, because the part 2 of the home movie footage, I don't know where it would be today. It certainly wouldn't be, on display and out for public consumption, that's for sure. So I was bidding against my aunt, Christina, for that footage.
I think you've put so much love and care and dedication into Joan's legacy, and I think she would beam with pride over this.
Thank you. I hope I'm doing her right. I think the last thing I would ever want is for her memory to just get extinguished, because she was just a wonderful person. She was my grandmother. She was good to so many people throughout her life, and I'm just trying to continue her legacy of treating people well, and still talking about her in history as just a outstanding actress in Hollywood.
Which brings me to a point, Casey, we talked about in the rehearsal. I have never read a biography about Joan Crawford that has satisfied me at all. I think a lot of them are hatchet jobs, and they don't really capture what a complicated, nuanced person she was. And I've just never been happy with any of them. So I really hope that a new one will happen in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. There's never been that perfect capturing of her essence in writing. I have so much material. Again, from the Doyle auction, I have hundreds of hours of. There were also in the second box, there were dozens and dozens of reel-to-reel audio tapes that have been preserved. I just need to spend some time, go through the contents. There are interviews. I have LPs of her songs that were produced that were in this box. And I just need to take some time, ignore my day job for a few hours, and start reviewing all this material, because I think it could be the basis for a much more introspective look at her life and career as well, because obviously everything meshes together.
And I think sometimes times change, and maybe a look at Joan through a 2021 lens or in the future. There's just so many things about her that I think deserve a fresh look.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The starting off with her, more towards the end of her life with, I mean, she was part of the Pepsi organization for almost 2 decades. Cheers to that. And just going from her business acumen of traveling across the country and around the world to expand Pepsi's influence. Yeah, they make soft drinks, but they're like any other corporation. They want to expand and get new customers. And moving back in time, to the deals that she was doing with her books and the movie deals that she was doing, I think just really needs some current, using our current 2021 lens to look back in time and see, how much of a trailblazer she was in all kinds of avenues. I am the proud owner of 2 pieces of furniture from Billy Haynes that were hers, that I just cherish. Oh, one other thing I picked up at the auction. Yeah, picked up at the auction. That's silly. Was she loved playing backgammon. That's a game I have never even tried to play, but I think I need to. One other purchase from that day, I purchased, of course, from my mother, my grandmother's last backgammon table. And I remember it when I was a child, those 2 Billy Haynes elbow chairs slid underneath that backgammon table. So that is set up in my living room.
Very cool.
So I have, I have a loving connection to JoJo through her stuff and her memory. So
let's talk for a minute about that relationship with Billy Haynes.
Yeah, Billy Haynes was a young actor along with Joan in the 20s, and famously, he was gay, and he was under extreme pressure from MGM to keep it quiet, keep a low profile, keep making movies for us, because he was a gorgeous man. Keep making movies for us, keep everything quiet, and he started to resist because he needed to live his life. And Joan was there for him from day one. They were friends forever, and friends up until the end. So I think that again shows, this is 1925. My God, I just again, I think it shows how much she cares about people, and her relationship with Billy Haynes just never faltered ever. And she was always supportive of her, of Billy, and I think his name was Jimmy Shields, I think was his partner. 80, 90 years before marriage equality was made the law of the land. She was 100% supportive of their relationship and their life. So that's just remarkable to me.
Isn't it true that when he left MGM to become an interior decorator, that she referred him to a lot of her movie star friends and sort of suggested they hire him?
Absolutely. Yeah, he designed furniture and interior decorating for Hollywood after that, and his designs are just incredible, and that they still resonate to this day. And she was able to help him move from Hollywood actor, and now I wouldn't say blacklisted, but you can't work here anymore because of his life. And she was able to assist him to move into an incredibly lucrative and fulfilling industry, as an interior decorator and furniture designer. I mean, just incredible.
So ahead of her time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really respect them. I like the silent films they made together too. I know they were
do
super
too.
early films for Joan, but
Yeah.
one was called Spring Break, one was called West Point. They
West
sometimes
Point.
run them too soon.
Yeah. And again, kudos to TCM. They really keep up with the programming about silent film, which is just incredible, because that is a lot, 90%, what do we always quote? 90% of silent films are gone. And they do just an excellent job keeping up the knowledge and showing all these films. It's the silent film is just incredible.
Well, we have a real treat. You have a few artifacts that you wanted to share with us today.
I do.
Yeah.
Again, I have a Joan cabinet of stuff. So I want to show two things, and they're, of course, food, well, actually four things. They're food related. And my wife was nice enough to polish up two of them today. Joan loved to entertain. We all know that. She provided, she would, I think her inspiration, and we discussed this during rehearsal, I think we might be onto something here. Her early marriage to Douglas Fairbanks Jr., she attended the most luxurious dinners at Pickfair with Doug Jr. as her, boyfriend and then husband, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. and Mary Pickford. Pickfair was known for extravagant dinner parties with 14 utensils out at each place setting. And I have two of those today, not from Pickfair necessarily, but from Joan's entertaining days. They were from the Christoph Silver Company. One is an asparagus holder, which I've eaten in a lot of restaurants. I've never seen an asparagus holder. So if you can see this, you pick up each stalk of celery, and it's called an asparagus eater. So you don't have to use a knife and fork and cut your asparagus up. You just pick them up and eat them. And I think that's crazy. And I have a collection of those. And another utensil is called a snail pincer. And I don't eat snails, but hey, whatever. And it came as a set. And you dipped into your snail plate, grabbed the snail, and boop, right in. So that's a interesting Joan artifact for today. And I also have a piece of her her dinnerware that this goes to the New York City apartment days, designed by Carlton Varney of Dorothy Draper. Okay. Lots of yellows, lots of limes, it's New York. Okay. Here's one of her dinner plates. It's kind of you can't really see it, but there's a bamboo edge. And these are the plates I remember eating off of as a kid with Joan. And one last thing. I'm not sure what this speaks to. I don't know if it's mid-century or what, but this is a double boiler. Cute lid. There's the double boiler part. I have a whole collection of this from her. It's the cute steel enamelware that I thought the fans would just love to see today. So just some mementos out of the closet.
Excellent.
Lots
And
of words and likes on this stuff.
you have brought some home movie footage for us today.
I do. I'm going to show a clip from the part two, and now of course it's just the Joan Crawford home movie collection period, because the collection's been merged. I'm going to show it's a local footage from, this is post Al Steele's death. So this is early 60s, and I believe in this clip she talks about Baby Jane. She had just finished filming Baby Jane, so it's 1962 thereabouts. And again, she receives a hero's welcome at this Midwestern town where the Coca, did I just say Coca-Cola? The Pepsi plant. I know. The Pepsi plant was being built, and she was there to open it. So let me. Oops. Just bear with me. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is the end. This is the right at the end of the Oscars. Just give me just a second. There we go. Okay. So this is her Pepsi airplane. She's being welcomed by local kids. Being welcomed by all the local dignitaries. And the gentleman in the back, oh, here we go.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to be here and be with the East family. I know that your several careers have been so distinguished. It's trying to pick out one particular thing to concentrate on, but I think that movie fans and those who are following television and fans with the energy knowing your recent work and perhaps what you're planning.
Those sunglasses are kind of everything.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
November 3rd and 500 theaters throughout the United States. That's a little unusual, isn't it? Working with Miss Davis. I wanted to do a picture with you since 1943. The both of Warner Brothers at that time, and they owned a property called Salon. I call it a product. It's a property called Ethan Chrome. And it would have been wonderful for us at the time, but unfortunately, she didn't. And so I never had the opportunity to work together.
Forever the movie star.
Okay, so in that clip, she is there with, I think his name is Herb Barnett. He was the CEO of Pepsi after Al Steele died. And again, she's in, Springfield, Illinois or whatever, and she's being handed bouquets of flowers. And it just, and if the audio wasn't clear, it was so good about switching from role to role right there. She's there as a Pepsi spokesperson and opening the plant, and then the interviewer asks her about her movie career, and she goes right into actress mode and starts plugging her latest film with Bette Davis, and then gives a little backstory that she's wanted to work with Bette Davis since 1943. I mean, come on. So so those are the kind of nuggets that we got at the auction.
Danny Miller is asking if you happen to see Feud, and if you had any thoughts on Jessica Lange.
I was gonna get to that.
Yeah, I know some people were torn about it. I have to admit, I was a little not worried by any means, but skeptical. Anybody playing my grandmother, I'm certainly not defensive, but I was worried to see how it was going to be portrayed. And of course, the whole the feud issue has been going on for decades and decades and decades. Overall, I think it was done well. I, as a child, appeared in the final episode. My sister and I, and we definitely didn't have black hair. We were both blonde, but I think it was well done. It was an artistic take on the concept and the idea of the Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, feud over those decades. I'd like to ask your opinions as well.
Well, I mean, those are two great actresses playing two great actresses, and to that extent, I found it very enjoyable.
I was a little mixed. Overall, I enjoyed it. I agree with Jack. All four great actresses, Oscar winners, titans, all in their own right. And half the episodes were directed by women, which I thought was awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
But the thing is, there were some lines of dialogue in it that didn't ring true in terms of the way people might have spoken then versus now. There were certain quibbles I had with certain things, but I think what rang true for me is the sexism, the ageism, and also I think in our society in general, and these things were, I think, worse back then perhaps, but as women are sort of pitted against each other in our society, people want the bitchiness, the feudiness, the catfights. They want that stuff. And I think there's always this narrative that's pushed of there's one room for one slot for one woman in the world.
Absolutely.
And I want that to be me. And I kind of hate that. Like, I love the idea of women helping each other, supporting each other, being colleagues and friends. And that really wasn't encouraged. I don't think the studios encouraged it. The publicity department surely didn't encourage it
Certainly
because
did
it
not.
made for good ink if they're
Mhm.
ripping each other's throats out, hating each other, etc. And I just think that movie really, or the whole feud in general, speaks to the times they lived in where women really were not encouraged to be friends, but encouraged to be bitter rivals. And to me, it's just sad, like that final line in Baby Jane, you mean all this time we couldn't have been friends?
Right, exactly.
I think there's
Absolutely.
a tragedy there because they had so much in common. It's ridiculous. And I don't know, I just think it's sad that they were sort of a product of that time and a product of that way of looking at women and pitting them opposite each other.
Right. Yeah, I
They're
couldn't agree
both
more.
brilliant artists. They're both great talents. I love them both so much.
Yeah, I was able to provide some of the home movie footage to Ryan Murphy Productions when I found out that they were starting to shoot the show, just to give, because the footage we just watched is of that time. It's 1962, so just to give Jessica Lange a little maybe guidance on Joan's mannerisms and everything else. So I think yeah, I did enjoy it, and it was done very well. I think my favorite episode outside of seeing me portrayed as a kid on screen was I think the one where they showed the Oscars telecast. That was just remarkable, the way they did the crane shot, following Jessica Lange through, and the again, in a different time and place, Betty Davis and Joan should have been friends and collaborators as opposed to enemies. And the way that both sides were kind of trying to sabotage each other about the Oscar night was just incredible to me, and very well done.
Ken Bymaster is asking, and this is interesting, Joan Crawford didn't have much of a television career, and I know some older actresses, they really made an effort to venture into television.
Mhm.
Did she have any thoughts on television? Was she a TV fan?
Yeah, she did a couple of guest spots here and there. She did, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Lucy Show, of course. But she was actually, I think she was close. Well, she was in negotiations to have her own show, but her health started declining in the 70s. So I think she would have followed Barbara Stanwyck, Doris Day. I mean, she had a great show for a number of years, because it was either that or continue with the really bad horror movies, because again, different time, different place. Older actresses were kind of pushed to the side, and TV was a medium that was accepting them, to do variety shows and dramas and westerns. So she was definitely interested in doing more television, especially that would have given her some stability with travel, and she could have shot that in New York or moved back to LA to do that, but her health started to decline, and she just couldn't do it. But great question.
Yeah. Benjamin is asking, was there I believe in Feud, the character was called Mamacita. Was there
Yes,
a real person that lived with her and helped take care of her?
absolutely. There were she had help. The Mamacita character is definitely a real person. I never met anybody in her household because she had already moved to New York, obviously, in 55, 56. The one person that I had a relationship with throughout my life, right up until she died, was Betty Barker, who was Joan's, decades and decades long confidential secretary. She did all of her correspondence for her. I knew Betty for decades, until she passed away a few years ago. But the Mamacita character is definitely, it's not a composite. That was a definite person in her life for sure.
Chloette is asking, of all her husbands, Do you think she had one who really was the love of her life? I would think it was Mr. Steele.
You hit it right on the net. Absolutely. I think Al was the love of her life. He was not a Hollywood person, but he was still a high-powered business person. I think that was I think that's where she wanted to be, and I think they were a match. And it just, it kind of hurts me that he died 4 years after they got married, and it's so ironic and weird. Each of her 4 marriages lasted 4 years apiece, and of course, he died in her bed of a massive heart attack, and but he is singularly the love of her life by all means.
But something that's interesting, again, going back to Joan being such always being a faithful friend, she remained friendly with all 3 of her ex-husbands. I think there was even one occasion or multiple occasions when she would have all 3 exes for one event, for one gathering.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the Hollywood community. No hard feelings. It just didn't work out kind of thought, and everybody stayed friends back then, especially Joan with her husbands. She kept in touch with all of them, Doug Fairbanks Jr. especially. And I think that's remarkable that, she would still remain friends with people she lived with and was married to for 4 years, divorced, and then decades later, they still talk and are still friendly with each other.
I've seen some interviews with Douglas Fairbanks Jr. when he was very old, and this one interview is kind of trying to bait him in terms of getting him to say something unkind about her, and he won't do it in the interview. Like, he's very classy and very gracious in how he handles that.
Yeah, Doug Fairbanks was a true gentleman, just a classy guy. He would never say anything bad, especially about Joan. They were so young. They were 21 when Joan got married, which today is just doesn't happen anymore. And both Hollywood stars, both extremely young. Joan coming from complete poverty, and Doug Fairbanks Jr. being the son of Fairbanks Sr. They were rich. They were Hollywood actors, and I think Joan being thrust into that world must have been mind blowing for her as a 21-year-old. Incredible.
Wow.
Jack, do we have any other questions rolling in?
Oh, let's see what we got. A lot of people are saying they met Doug Fairbanks Jr. and he was great. Mindy Garza is asking, what are some of her specific charities that she cared about and contributed to? Were there some in particular that you're aware of that she cared about?
Yeah, they're in her will. American Cancer Society. She was also, I don't believe it's listed in her will, but she was a huge contributor and volunteer for the Jimmy Fund, which was a cancer fund, and the Hollywood Home for actors and actresses and crew. That was probably dollar for dollar, probably her biggest charitable contribution on a yearly basis. And she was charitable right until the end. She would do TV spots. She would do telethon appearances for all the charities she worked with right up until the end. So she was charitable, from her earliest days right until the end of her life.
Very cool.
Jack, do we have more questions?
Let me pan through the feed here. I loved her in this. I loved her in that. We have some Sadie McKee fans.
Nice. Okay, good.
It's a good one.
What amazes me too, Casey, is how many movies they made at that time. Like today, you might see a star make 1 a year, maybe 2, but I mean, they cranked them out back then. It's really astounding.
Yeah, they did. There's very few actors today that have as much production. They're usually character actors today that will put out 3 or 4 movies a year. And Hollywood MGM would put out 300 movies a year. They want to have something new every single day putting out to put in the theaters. And she'd do multiple movies a year, and and just keep continuing on and just move to the next one. Just incredible.
I believe we already discussed this in our rehearsal, but this is a great thing to share on the feed. Some people are asking what happened to her Oscar.
Oh, sure, sure. My mom, Kathy, sold it back in 1993. I believe it sold for just over $68,000. And it was Christie's auction house. And of course, all their sales records are completely confidential. And I've been nosing around forever. And it was just recently resold a few years ago for big bucks. And again, it's in the wind, it's in the ether somewhere. And of course, that's one of my dreams. If I, hit the lottery to, put a full page ad in the paper and, get the Oscar back. Because that's the singular Joan, piece of history that I would love to bring home.
Are any of her costumes anywhere?
I've seen a couple in collections. There was actually a collector. Oh, I'm sorry, his name escapes me. He just recent Jean London. Is that name familiar to you guys at all? Jean contacted Joan way back, decades and decades, I think in the 50s. And she donated to him a number of her costumes from some of the movies. And I saw that actually a local museum here in Southeast PA ran a show maybe 10 years ago. And it was Jean London's Hollywood, and he had hundreds of costumes. They are still around here and there. I know Warner Brothers has a bunch of them in their archive, as does MGM. And I saw the Bride Wore Red dress at that was at FIT in New York City, Fashion Institute of Technology. That was about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, somewhere around there.
Oh my God.
That it was, and the Bride Wore, and of course it's a black and white film, you can't see it, but it's just just red sequins, and just, and my grandmother wasn't a real tall person, but the dress was just incredible. The detail and the creation of the dress was just remarkable.
I would give anything to see an entire exhibit about the gowns Adrian made for Joan.
Absolutely, of course, absolutely. He was just an astounding designer, and made all the MGM leading ladies just look just incredible.
And I think they really collaborated too. Like, Joan doesn't strike me as the kind of person that would just stand at a fitting and just wear whatever was put on her. I think she probably had a lot of feedback input, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. She again, working so closely with the crew and the director on her films, working with Adrian, must have been just crazy, but I know she knew what she looked good in. Even in Gorgeous Hussy, which I it's okay, but even the one period piece she did, I think she would give a lot of input as to what, maybe not so much as in Torch Song, but
Joan certainly knew what looked good on her, for sure.
She did.
Ken Johnson has a good one. Now, Joan started at MGM as a dancer. She was actually brought under contract as a dancer, not as a actress. Did she continue to dance into her senior years?
As far as I know, not so much, but obviously with some of her roles, she did have the opportunity to show off her skills. Torch Song, one of them. But she was, famously, as a young actress, she was at the nightclubs doing the Charleston, every night, both to keep in shape and just to be out and enjoy. I mean, she's 19, 20-year-old in Hollywood in the 20s. Why not? It's still the 20s, and so.
From what I've always heard, that she wanted to be an actress, and that Billy Haynes encouraged her, and he said, well, if you want to get attention, you need to go out, and that the Charleston, she'd win all these contests, and that kind of got her in the papers, got people talking about her. And the dancing, at least as far as I understand, was sort of a way to get attention for her to do other things. And she always felt if she could get a screen role dancing, that would launch her.
Yep.
Like that would really make her a huge star, which of course happened with Our Dancing Daughters.
Exactly. Yeah, that whole trio of films, Our Dancing Daughters, Our Modern Maidens, just set her up to just skyrocket into, and then once she got, established as a star, she'd have her pick of scripts, which, she did all kinds of different movies for MGM back in the 20s and 30s.
Catherine Bird is asking about a lost film or a copyright complicated film called Letty Linton.
Oh, sure.
Very hard to watch, to find.
Yes. Yes.
Do you know anything about it?
Oh yeah. There's that movie was stopped from being shown back in the early 30s. Two playwrights sued MGM, and one of them actually donated her papers to Bryn Mawr College, which is about 20 miles from here. They sued to stop. The movie was done. It was in the can. It was starting to be shown. And the story remarkably was similar to their play. So it went all the way to the US Supreme Court, and MGM lost. So the movie apparently is in, it's in mothballs somewhere. And I've spoken to, I think, 2 different archivists. There are original copies still on file. So I think it's just going to take a little bit of courage by MGM to put it back out, because my research on this topic stops as a dead end. There are no living heirs to those 2 playwrights. So I'm not a lawyer, but on a legal sense, I'm not sure who would stop releasing that film onto DVD or let Film Forum or TCM show the film, because it's apparently in cold storage waiting to see the light of day. I've seen a bootleg copy of it, but it's horribly washed out. Sound is bad, but there are no publicly available archival prints that I've ever seen, but they are in cold storage apparently.
It's so frustrating because I've always heard that I've seen the bootleg copy too, and it's kind of like watching a movie through a glass of milk.
Yes,
absolutely. So bad.
Yeah.
But it's like one of the most influential fashion movies ever, and it's just frustrating that we can't see like a pristine restoration of it somehow, because I bet that would be really incredible.
Yeah, the Letty Linton dress apparently was the biggest selling garment, in history, or some ridiculous thing based on a film. So yeah, that's another one of my pet projects, is to see what we can do to, get that to be premiered at the next TCM Film Festival in person. Because that would just be a sellout crowd, that's for sure. We'd have to show that multiple times.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
A couple of people are asking for a closer view of the photos behind you, Casey.
Oh, sure. Hold on. Let me go grab them. Give me just a second.
While he's doing that, I'll show mine. This print was made for me by Mark Vieira, who is Irving Thalberg, an MGM expert. And it's in an Art Deco frame that I have in my little home here. And this is, by the way, a dress that Adrian made for Letty Linton.
And yet she posed for those photos on the Grand Hotel set, is that right?
Yeah, on the Grand Hotel revolving door set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love Mark Vieira. We talk, and his support of George Hurrell's, legacy is just astounding to me. Okay, so this is the first one. French Otone, Joan. You can see that. And I have something else I grabbed before I left for grad school, was a bunch of full-size Hurrell negatives. So I have those as well. They're in acid-free storage. So I have those as well. And this one, of course, we love the Clark Gable in this household too. So this is she and Clark.
Oh, I love it.
And 30 years of the relationship doesn't hurt things. We also have out in the hallway, we have oh gosh, it's pretty big. It's it's a classic pose of Clark. He's in a like a director's chair, but it's got to be, it's 30 by 24 portrait of him, and it's a famous pose of his. It's got to be 1932, maybe 33, and that's in our main hallway because it's just a great photo.
I think Joan would be pleased about that.
Yes, I think so as well.
Benjamin is asking, when you got to briefly know Joan, was she all the glammed up, made up movie star, or was she a little more homey?
Yeah, that's a great question because, again, her health was starting to decline. I think this is after the if you're familiar with the Rosalind Russell thing that happened. They went to a party together and were photographed, and she didn't like what she saw, so she started to go out less. And if she couldn't be Joan Crawford in public, she wouldn't go out, which I understand a little bit. So when she would greet us at her Imperial House apartment front door, she'd be wearing a floral house coat, and by that time she was starting to wear some wigs to keep the persona up, a little bit of makeup. But again, she wasn't, that's why at that age, I didn't understand that this was Joan Crawford, because she was just our grandmother meeting us at the door of her apartment. Mm-hmm. There was no pretense. There was no, there were no airs put on, it was just our grandmother. So that's how I knew her, very down to earth. She'd feed us lunch. It was just very down to earth, grandmotherly experience.
That's really cool because, for someone like Joan, who was constantly thought of as a huge star, it had to have been fun to have someone that just loved her for her and not for who she was, what films she made, what she had, etc.
Yeah, we were just there as two kids visiting going to grandma's house. But it was a really neat apartment in New York City in Manhattan, and the experience certainly wasn't normal, but it was to us, and it just showed to me and to my sister that she had undying love for us, we to her, and it was just so nice just going to her apartment and hanging out with her as a kid.
A couple of people are asking about Joan's other grandchildren. Are they as devoted and fanatic as you, or?
Okay, so my Aunt Cindy had two boys. I haven't seen them in decades. I think the last time I saw them was it was probably right around the time she died. They lived in Iowa. I think they live in Texas now. I've not really been in touch with them. And as far as I can tell, I'm the only one, keeping the flame for the family. So, but I've not been in touch with them since I was a kid.
Well, I'm glad you're doing what you do, because I can't tell you how important history, of course, is in keeping these stars, these artists, these memories, these stories alive. And just thank you so much for doing this for us all.
Thank you.
Do you want to, this might be a good segue, do you want to share how you helped bring back the republication of My Way of Life?
Yeah, as all Joan fans know, the editions of A Portrait of Joan from '62 and My Way of Life from '71, they've been out of print for decades. You can go on eBay and spend $100 on a copy. So I was approached back in 2017 by a small publisher, Gray Malkin Media in LA. They publish or republish, reissue out of print books that are very interesting, special, that just have kind of been lost to time. So of course it was an instant yes. And I worked with the publisher for a couple of months, to kind of refashion A Portrait of Joan, some new photography. We tried to make the, kind of join the two books together a little bit. And going back to that Doyle auction from 2011, also in that boxes of stuff were the original negatives for A Portrait of Joan from '62. I have the actual negatives that they used for the book. So we used a lot of those for A Portrait of Joan, and they were, redone. And we chose a bunch of new photos for My Way of Life to give a different perspective of Joan. And we found some, great archival photos of her, working in her kitchen, and just to give a little bit of different perspective. And the fans just went crazy. They've been selling like hotcakes, and especially with Feud coming out the same year as the books, there was just renewed interest in her life. And it's the, I wouldn't say typical autobiography of Portrait of Joan, but it's more the standard, this is my life, and it ends in '62. And then My Way of Life, of course, is the lifestyle book beyond all lifestyle books.
I'm so glad you did this, because I've been trying to get an original first edition on eBay for ages, and they kept putting so high I would get out.
Absolutely.
And then when Feud came out, I was at Larry Edmunds, my favorite bookstore in Hollywood, and I saw they had this reissued, and I just snapped up a copy. And let's talk about how we're doing a giveaway today.
Yeah, I have 3 copies of My Way of Life available, and you guys are moderating, so it'll be your choice how the recipients are chosen. But I will take the 3 recipients who you guys I'm not sure how you guys want to do this, but I'm giving away 3 copies. I will personally inscribe it and send them off to the lucky 3 winners to their homes first thing tomorrow morning.
Excellent.
Okay.
Jack, how should we do the contest?
I don't know.
It's difficult.
We've got 40 people watching, so how can we do this at random?
Maybe just leave in the comments
Well,
what your favorite Joan Crawford movie is and why, and then we'll pick at random 3 people.
There you go.
to pick.
Beautiful.
yeah, or I was thinking maybe we could do some Joan trivia.
Oh, trivia would be fun. You want to do that?
All right.
Okay.
Can you think of maybe we can each think of a random Joan
Okay,
question.
there's one Joan movie we didn't talk about today yet, but it's one of my favorites.
Right.
It is set in San Francisco, and her co-star is Jack Palance
Yes.
and Gloria Graham. What was the title of that movie?
And she should have won an Oscar for that. It was an outstanding performance.
Outstanding. The closet scene with the
Closet
toy.
scene.
Brilliant acting.
Yeah.
So good.
Okay, let's see who's the first one to answer. Everyone's like, trivia.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would.
Here.
Oh, very good.
All right, very good.
Who got it, Jack?
Maxwell Hoffman was the first one to answer.
Okay, Maxwell Hoffman. Then you will get a copy.
In.
Okay, Jack, do you have a trivia question for Joan? On Joan?
I do, actually. Who did Joan say was her favorite fellow leading lady at MGM, and why?
Mm.
I don't even know that one, actually.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
That might stump people, Jack, to be honest. We'll see.
Okay.
Casey, do you have any Joan trivia questions you might want to throw out?
Yeah, there's one. Let's go back to in what film did Joan appear in but never appear on screen with Greta Garbo?
Anyone answering that one, Jack?
Okay, well, Liz answered mine. Liz answered Greta Garbo. And that's true. Yeah, that was her favorite
There you go.
leading lady. She said that it's something that Joan actually said. She said, if I was ever going to turn lesbian, it would be for Greta Garbo.
There you go. Of course.
YouTube is such a goldmine of information, and I found a documentary about Greta Garbo narrated by Joan at one point on YouTube.
Nice.
All right. And Jack Priest was the first to answer with Grand Hotel.
There you go. Very good.
Yay! Okay, so Maxwell, Liz, and Jack, Please send me a private message on Facebook. I will compile all of your information, your mailing addresses, and send them along to Casey today. And as of tomorrow morning, that book will be on its way to you.
Very good.
And Casey, you were going to play us some audio clips too, because much to our delight, she was a pioneer on so many fronts, but also in the world of audiobook, because I don't think that was a huge thing at the time.
Yeah, it's I would venture a guess that this was the first audiobook ever created. Joan narrated the entirety of My Way of Life back in 1973. It was put on vinyl, for those of us old enough to know what vinyl is, and it was sent to libraries for the blind as an audiobook. So for the audiobook portion of My Way of Life, we have Joan speaking for 5+ hours, narrating her own book. And, this was 1973. So I would, again, venture a guess this is the first, foray into audiobooks for any celebrity, especially to read it themselves. So I'm gonna play an excerpt here. And we released this in conjunction with My Way of Life back in 2017. And again, both are available in print and audiobook on your favorite platform. So give me just a second. Nope. Okay, so this is chapter 4, I believe, of My Way of Life. And it's in Joan's own. There we go. There we go. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
Chapter 4. A lovely home means two things to me. First of all, it's a cocoon in which to wrap a happy marriage. And second, it's a place to welcome friends, make them comfortable, and give them delicious things to eat. If I hadn't become an actress, I'm sure I'd have made a good chef or a restaurateur. Cooking to please other people is one of the things I love best. When Helen Hayes and Bethel Leslie came to stay with me in California, I had a really challenging hostess task. They were there for 10 days. During the day, Helen had story conferences at Paramount, but each night for 10 nights, I had a dinner party for 18. Helen, of course, wanted to see all of her friends, and I thought that if they all swarmed in at once for a big cocktail party or buffet, she'd hardly get a chance to say more than hello to any one of them. So there were just 18 every night because that was the number that could be seated in my dining room. Before, during, and after dinner, she had a chance for a good chat with everyone. My cook, oh, what a gem she was. Never had a day off, but she had help. I had double service, so there were 2 butlers and 4 maids, all doing their jobs efficiently and quietly. While we had our first course, 2 of the maids would tidy up the drawing room, cleaning the ashtrays and clearing away the hors d'oeuvres and glasses. Then they were ready to help the butler serve extra things like bread and butter. The other 2 helped clear away between courses and cleaned up. The butler's pantry was so separated from the dining room that we couldn't hear the clatter they must have been making. I had to create 10 different menus, but that wasn't a problem. Good food is one of my passions, and it's easy for me to dream up dinner menus. I varied the table settings too. I've always collected lovely cloths and serviettes, and I have extra large placemats made to order. I like mats big enough to hold the whole service, including the salad and the wine glasses neatly. I've collected fabrics for my table from as far away as Beirut. Needless to say, the porcelain and crystal sparkled. The silver was polished until it reflected, and the table was lit by candles and soft wall sconces. Flower arrangements were low so that people didn't have to crane their necks to see who was on the other side of the table. William Haynes gave me an important rule for entertaining. We were giving a party, and I said, Willie, I don't think I can handle 200 people. I think I'll have to have them come here for cocktails and then take them to Chasen's, where I'll have a private room prepared for us. He said, never move your party except from one area to another in your own home. I often entertain in restaurants these days, and I reserve 2 rooms, one for cocktails, the other for the dinner. But the party itself is not moved.
Okay, so that was in Joan's own voice, and it just showed her she knew what she was doing with entertaining, and taking advice from Billy Haynes on what to do with how to entertain people. It's just incredible. So that's her about 4 years before she passed away. So she's got a little husky voice. She was a lifetime smoker, but it's just, that's the voice I remember hearing in New York City when I go visit her. So it just brings back some great memories for me.
I have to, according to the feed here, Liz was the first person to answer the trivia question about Greta Garbo. So
Oh, cool.
I think we may have to update that. So, yeah.
Are we getting any other questions coming in?
Any other questions coming in, anybody? Let's see.
There's just so much to unpack about Joan. I mean, she just had an epic life, an epic career, and there's sort of endless information about her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are so many different facets of her life. Even looking back at her childhood, which was just incredible. She moved a lot, extreme poverty, and looking at her life through that early lens of, maybe not having enough dinner. I knew she felt, I knew she felt undereducated. The library she maintained was extensive. I have tons of her books still in my own library here. I knew she was always hungry for more information and learning. I think that was a direct effect of her childhood. And then, could you imagine landing in Hollywood at 18 years old, dancing on screen, and then skyrocketing to success and maintaining that success over 6 decades, and also being on the board of directors of a major corporation, and traveling the world. So there's just tons and tons of, different aspects to look at her life.
Some people are asking if Joan has great-grandchildren. Casey?
She does. My sister has 1 child, and I can't speak, again, I've not been in touch with Cindy's kids for decades, but she does. She has one great-grandchild. Her name's Olivia. She doesn't live too far away from me here in Eastern Pennsylvania.
So, Jack or our audience, any final thoughts on Joan today? Any kind of closing statement that you would like to make about her?
I think Charles Busch put it best, that Joan Crawford, if nothing else, was the ultimate movie star. And I agree with that.
I raise a glass of Pepsi to that sentiment.
Cheers to that. Cheers to that.
Everyone says they hope you publish her book and finish your own memoir of her and thoughts on her. Everyone would love for that to happen.
Great.
Yeah.
And you shall have the final word.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Carrie, I want to thank you and Jack for today. It was such a, obviously the times we're living in right now, this was just a wonderful diversion for me personally. I want to thank you for this opportunity. And I want to thank her fans who tuned in today. It's been my life's goal since I met Scott Michaels back in 2006. That's when I started this journey. I took one of those crazy Hollywood tours, not his exactly. He was still working the movie line tour at that time. We just started to talk, and I finally just blurted out who I was, and we've been great friends ever since. And he convinced me to start talking about my grandmother, and take just great pride in her life, and talk about the good things she did throughout her entire life and her miraculous career. So I want to thank you for today. And Jack, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
This was delightful, and I just am so grateful, Casey, that you've been so willing to share your memories, your memorabilia, and thank you again for being such a wonderful steward of Joan's legacy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, until next time, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to Hollywood Kitchen.
Cheers.